Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Hashtag. And I'm really, really excited by today's guest, somebody who's doing amazing things on social and for women everywhere, actually, I'd say. So, Suzanne, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I'm really thrilled. It's really nice to talk to other people about the social media things. Because actually it's been a huge learning journey for me.
Yeah.
I've been absolutely blown away by the amount of support I've had and what a nice community I've built on social media. But my background, I suppose, I'm a pelvic health physiotherapist, and I became increasingly frustrated within my job role, and also having had personal experience of pelvic health issues, that there's just not the support out there for people. And you hear the common phrases all of the time, like, oh, well, I've had babies, so what do I expect? Of course, I can't go on a trampoline, and that's just normal. I should be just rushing to the toilet. And I was just like, this isn't normal. This is stuff that is dealable with, and quite often you
Mm,
can either get complete resolve or you can get massive improvements with some very, very basic stuff. So I think my frustration and passion of working in this area ended up with me setting up Know Your Flaws, which I set up as a not-for-profit social enterprise, and it kind of kicked off really in 2020 when COVID hit. And I was feeling even more frustrated because my already small service within the NHS was being dragged into COVID management, which was fine. Of course, I didn't mind doing it, but I could see there was just backlog of patients.
yeah.
So I thought I need to do something. And so I've been extremely lucky, I think, because what I've done, having built up Know Your Flaws as a not-for-profit, is built a little community that support me. So they all do everything for free, but they are people who've got a similar interest or just also passionate about improving pelvic health. And they're all in the background there, just giving me advice for free, and just saying, this is what I think you should be doing. And I come up with the ideas and say, I want to do this, I want to do that. And they go, oh, I'm not sure, or why don't you try this? And so that's how I ended up on social media.
I absolutely love that. So, Suzanne, just quickly give us your social media handles. How can people find you before we continue?
So my social media handle is Know Your Flaws, and that is on now on YouTube. It's on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.
Amazing. And
So
just
as
for
fun as
anybody
that.
listening, it's floors as in the floor that you
Floor.
walk on, FLOORS, not your
That's right.
flaws as in what's wrong with you.
No, exactly. Yeah, I think we were thinking pelvic floors when we did it, but we're like, oh, actually, that has a little bit of a good, funny ring to it. But yeah, the amount of people are like, is this a flooring company? I was like, no,
Yeah,
pelvic floors, pelvic floors.
brilliant. Yeah, the SEO is going crazy for you, I suspect.
Yeah.
Actually, funny enough, I was scrolling through Instagram on Sunday and I followed Gemma Atkinson. And this post, she spoke about this very thing, this topic specifically at the weekend, because she does a lot of gym and health and fitness workouts, etc., for her community. And she was saying like that there isn't the level of support or knowledge about pelvic floor health post-pregnancy or postpartum, post-birth.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that was a defining moment. I think it was quite relevant and to see
Yeah.
what she was saying, and she tagged in a charity as well based in Manchester, I think,
Yeah, I'll
or
have to
or
go and
or a
look. I think I've
physio.
missed that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to have a look, because it's really great. There are some really good celebrities who are now starting to say this needs to be looked at a bit more, especially because they've probably gone through the journey and realised, like, oh crikey, what's just happened to me, and I don't just
Yeah.
bounce back. So it's great to have those voices, because those voices make so much more impact than often than a healthcare professional trying to say, we can help you. We need people to be saying, actually, there is help out there and it works, or actually we need to be talking about it, because we do.
Yeah, definitely. And I will put my hands up right now and say that I don't have children. So I hope any of the things that I say make sense or are the right words, but please do correct me if they're wrong.
No, well, you're
Um,
fine, because, and the other thing is, I think we always associate pelvic floor issues with having babies, and actually people without babies can have pelvic floor issues.
there you go.
Men can have pelvic floor issues. Transgender people can have pelvic floor issues, but it's the reason we always link it with pregnancy is because, of course, there's a huge amount of change that happens to the pelvic floor at that point. But
Mm.
actually, my real campaign and what I'm trying to push for this year is that we need to get pelvic floor fit, and young people need to be thinking about doing it in preparation for whatever life throws at them. because I will see people in clinics who've never had a baby and yet they have leakage.
Wow.
So it's another part of your body. And I often say to people, you don't do squats just because you've got knee pain. You do squats because you want to be fit. And it's the same with your pelvic floor. It can be strengthened and used without any need to be treating something. It's there as a muscle to be used, if that makes sense.
Wow. Yeah, it really does. So do you think that it's one of the things that the younger you start, the better it is? Or can you be in your late 40s, 50s and see lots of improvements?
I think both. I think it's interesting because there's a lot of thought in terms of the younger clientele of people. There's a lot of thought that actually there's some worry that people will overwork. However, on my TikTok account, I get a lot of young people. So most of my following are kind of 18 to 24. And some of them have been squeezing the pelvic floor because they've got maybe ADHD. And so they've used it as a coping mechanism or a soother. And they go, oh, and that's why I'm like, absolutely fine. I've got a really good, strong pelvic floor. But there are some people who will hold tone with their pelvic floor. And so actually being aware of that when you're young and be able to let that go is also really, really important. So just that awareness of being young and having those discussions, I think, is really important.
Wow.
But likewise, I see people who are in their 40s. When you look at older people who go out and go to the gym suddenly, they can absolutely build muscle bulk.
Yeah.
You've not wasted all that time. You just need consistency to work on a muscle.
And yeah, dedication to doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And some kind of motivation.
Yeah, definitely. And that all starts with or continues with having that conversation, doesn't it? And things like what you're doing and other accounts that are out there, and I say influencers having the conversation gets people talking about it, because it is just something that isn't widely discussed, is it?
It isn't. It isn't. And it's been, I suppose, taboo. I'm hoping it's becoming less taboo. I think if I think back to my, education, and when we started talking about that area at school, everybody just like put their head down in the books and like tittered and I think there's still an element of that, but it's interesting seeing the younger, like my children growing up now. I'm, actively speak to them about it, and a lot of my friends do, and I think it becomes less embarrassing the more we talk about these things. It just if you don't see it or you don't talk about it, it's
taboo.
It's
100%. And I've got quite a few friends who have said those exact words that, oh, I can no longer run. That's what being a mum does, and all that kind of thing. You're like, wow, that what completely changed. And like you say, yeah, no longer can I go on a trampoline. You're like, wow, that's.
And I think that's really sad. I think that's what has been passed down through the generations, is because it's so common. This is now what we expect as normal, because it's something like 1 in 3 women will have some kind of leakage postnatally. And I know myself, I was exactly the same. I couldn't go on a trampoline after my second. I can now. Absolutely can now. And my mum even said as I got on the trampoline a couple of years back, are you really doing that?
Yeah.
And I said, yes, I am. But I was talking to people about their pelvic floors all the time. So my pelvic floor is just automatically trained in a way. But yeah, there was a point where there would have been no way. So it is possible. It's entirely possible. It's just getting the right advice and help to get back on the trampoline if you want to do that.
I love that. So talking about advice and help then, your TikTok account is crazy good.
Oh, thank you.
Crazy good.
I do. I love doing it. I think that's what it is. I love being a bit silly in front of the camera, and I just think, if other people enjoy it, brilliant. It's brilliant.
But it just shows, like, so TikTok, what you're doing there is like the absolute gold of social content creation, because it's entertaining for a start, which everybody loves, and which is primed for TikTok right now. It's educational, so people are getting value from it, and it's inspiring because you're able to show the change and talk about the changes and, evidence, what you're saying works.
Yeah.
So what was the first kind of decider for you? When did you launch your TikTok account? And what were you like, I know what I'm going to do? Or did you go on there and just like, what should I do? And ask your audience?
It's funny, it happened quite organically in a way, but I'd been on Instagram for a while, and I'd hit a bit of a roadblock with it, and I felt very much like I don't want to be doing the same as lots of other healthcare professionals who were doing pretty much the same. But I was given a bit of a kick by one of my board members who said, come on, you need to go on social media and share this, because so many people don't know. And I'm like, but so many people do know, because it's all on my feeds. There's loads of stuff out there already. And she quite rightly pointed out that it depends what you're interested in, you get. So there's lots of people who weren't getting that. And I don't know what completely inspired me to go onto TikTok, but I thought I wasn't really getting any further with Instagram, and it just wasn't growing very, very fast, but despite quite a lot of hard work. And I just thought, I think it was in April last year, I was on the bus on the way to my NHS job, and I just thought, right, I'm going to start a TikTok account. And I had a student physio with me at the time. And so I said to her, look, I don't really know what I'm doing. Can you just point me in the right direction? Because I'd almost even said to myself, oh, you're too old to go on TikTok.
Oh,
But she got me started and actually just pointed out, right, this is what you need to do. This is what your hashtags are for, and what your FYP was, and SEOs, and what the trends were. And I started putting some content on, and I remember going to her and saying, I've gone viral, when I got to one of my posts got to 10,000 views. And she turned to me and she said, maybe viral in a pelvic health sense. And I was like, okay,
yes.
I see. But it was one where I duetted and had explained somebody who was urgent on the toilet. And I thought, oh, that's really good because it's educational and it could see it was good. But it was every educational one I did was not really going anywhere. And then I just thought, I got in the head of one of my friends who's on the board who's had issues with her bladder, and she was telling me about some of the stuff that she was watching on TikTok, and she was liking the challenges, and she was liking it was a bit fun. And then somebody had asked me a question, something along the lines of, how long should you hold to? And a piece of music came, it was 1, 2, 3, and I was just doing with the timing, and I was just like, and then I started watching it. I was like, gee, I'm going to squeeze to this, and I thought, do you know what? This is quite good for me. And so then I did a post where I did a squeeze with my pelvis, and I thought, do you know, that's quite good. I quite like watching it. Nothing happened to it for probably a month, I would say. So I did that in June, and it had a few followings, and like I was getting maybe 1 or 2 new followers a week, and I was trying to get to 1,000. And then all of a sudden, one night I went out to an exercise class, and I came back, and it had just gone whoosh. And I
Wow.
was like, oh, I've got 50 comments. And then it went a little bit crazy because I felt then well, I still feel very, I suppose, responsible
Right.
for anybody who might be doing it wrong. So I try and go through all of my comments. And of course, that in between running a family and work and everything else I do was a little bit intense, and it has quietened down quite considerably. But it was that one post that somebody had shared. And then subsequently, it is the squeeze-alongs that always do really well. And so they're the ones that I've continued to do, and you'll see the most of on my channel now. I'll stick some educational, kind of a bit more boring ones in for people who need that extra content. But yeah, I have great fun just
I love it. So you
looking at
attract
songs.
people in with this hashtag squeeze along.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's hysterical, but so great. Hysterical in a good way.
yeah,
And I love that as a really important point, tip wise, for anyone listening about TikTok, in that you can create something that you think that hasn't done that well, and
mm,
then somehow, some way, like a month later, it gets pulled out of the algorithms
yeah.
and is going crazy.
Yeah, I think all it took was somebody to share it, like a midwife or something, who was like, this is really good. And 1 or 2 people sharing it then just gets it going. So
Yeah.
yeah, just if there's something that you think is good, I would always say to somebody, just, keep plowing on that. If you're interested in watching it, there will be other people out there who are interested in watching it too.
Yeah.
So it's just finding that little niche. And I think the other big tip I would have in retrospect is, like, whenever you put anything on, you always want it to be good and perfect, but actually the imperfections were actually what pushed it forward. So, like, for example, the fact that I didn't put pelvic floor at the top, people were like, what's this? And so they commented, like, I've been squeezing my hand for like forever. And so just that, and of course it's quite funny. And so then they tag their friends. And so that again just helped raise a bit of traction. So I would say,
That's
when you put
genius.
any post out, just make sure there's a slight imperfection in there that might get people talking.
That is a genius tip. I love that. Thank you very much, everybody. If you do that, then obviously tag us in at
Yeah.
Know Your Flaws and at Naturally Social. We'd love to see. Cool. So go back to the whole community side. So you've got this massive community now, and you said they almost support you and lead you in your content creation strategy. How does that look?
Well, it's so different from the other social media channels. So what I've learned from the other social media channels is that you build a network of other healthcare professionals that tend to come to you and you support each other. I've not had that at all with TikTok. What I've had is people who are enjoying my content basically telling me I'm a queen, telling me I'm just, I'm a slay. I'm like, oh my goodness, like all of these things, and like they love me. I tell my husband, I'm like, people love me. They actually love me. Do you love me?
Love
And
it.
so it's that kind of, just the interaction and the positive feedback you get, and then just things like, please keep doing this. But the biggest thing that's kept me going is when people have said, I can feel a difference with doing these.
Wow.
And I've had huge ranges of people who have commented, ranging from young people who are struggling with bladder issues, who feel like it's a safe space, to people in their 70s who have had operations and are recovering and are thankful for the
Wow.
content for that, to transgender people who obviously just, they have so much going on and sometimes don't feel like they can access healthcare particularly easily.
Yeah.
And so, and the good thing is, I was prepping myself for lots of bad comments.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, and I have had very few. If anything, the bad comments have been from other healthcare professionals. And I've had a few that have tried to be a bit derogatory. And like there's been maybe one bit, because I tried to be very gender neutral and inclusive. I haven't always got it right because of my background being very women's health,
Of
which
course.
I've had to modify. And I think that's really important that we need to be doing that. So I've made changes to the words I say, but I've also had some people troll and say, actually, you should be able to say woman. And so I've had to stop a couple of those conversations, but that has been it.
Wow.
Apart from that, the community have supported each other. They answer questions for each other and they say, keep going. And I think that's the nicest thing about TikTok. And that's why I love it the most. It's just
Yeah.
so supportive.
Absolutely. I think it's still the only social channel where people are reporting to have come off of using it, to when they close the app down, to actually feeling good. People can go onto any other platform generally, and they might leave that session feeling a little bit disheartened or down or bored.
Yeah.
But TikTok is still reported as the one where people are leaving having felt uplifted.
Yeah. It's much more fun. It's also hard to get off it.
Yes, I
You can
know.
easily keep going because of that buzz that you can get from it. So it's slightly addictive, I think. But yeah, it's much nicer.
That's definitely another episode.
Yeah.
So what sort of kind of boundaries are you putting in place for yourself managing this community? You said that you were getting hundreds of comments and it's kind of tailed off a little bit, but you've obviously learnt the hard way and how consuming and overwhelming it can be.
Absolutely.
What sort of boundaries have you put in place now? What advice have you got for people who are trying to build community? Because let's not forget, actually, it is the responding and the interaction that really builds it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've got it 100% right, to be fair. I suppose over Christmas it went much quieter over December, and I don't know whether that was just the content that I was putting out or whether just somebody up there say, just take a bit of a breather. But I try and segment a bit of time to one side. So I know, like when I'm on the bus on the way to my NHS job, I tend to try and do a bit of my commenting then. And I try to put some time aside that is for TikTok. But yeah, it does tend to take over my evenings some days. And my husband will often say, you said you were going to be 5 minutes and it's now 45 minutes. So I'm not perfect by any stretch, but part of it is because I enjoy it and I can see where I'm getting to. I haven't got to the point where I have completely burnt out from it. And I can feel that it's still beneficial. But thank goodness it weaves and wanes. So I think when you get that weave and wane, my advice would be don't panic, because that up and down will happen. And perhaps you just need to take a step and use that as a break. But definitely see if you can segment so that you even put timings on it, try and be a little bit more rigid and say, I'm going to stop after this amount of time, because also filming the content as well takes time, and editing. So it's fitting it all in, and it's trying to be strict with yourself. It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's hard, but I think that's great advice. And I probably wouldn't give anything different either, particularly when you're starting out and building an account the way that you are and what it's for. It is pure, that, as I said, it's that social focused, impact driven, and it's about you. It's you're the person behind it. So it is very much about being super focused with your time and
Yeah.
knowing when to stop and making sure that you're balancing all aspects of your life and making sure that everybody in your life is aware of what you're doing and happy with they've got to be on board, haven't they? Because you need a
Yeah.
supportive partner and a supportive family
Absolutely. Yeah.
in order for that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really hard. The other thing I would say is I got to a point of realizing I didn't have to respond to every single comment. So I will now, like, I'll still try and go through them all and I'll heart some and not reply to everybody. But yeah, just giving yourself a break, that you might miss some, but actually, it's not the end of the world. They'll come back and, you'll be able to, if there's something that you've done wrong, you'll be able to catch them at another point just to correct that. So
Yeah, and I think if you're really honest with that, even if it's like you say it in the odd post or you say it in the odd comment that, you try to respond. We see celebrities do it all the time,
yeah,
trying to respond to everything. I can't get back to you all,
yeah,
but I very much appreciate and love everyone's comments. So that's the best thing
yeah.
you can do, is openly acknowledge it and be transparent. I think that's how you keep your community on board, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been one or two times where there's been posts that I think one or two of my ones have gone, like, I don't know, can't remember how many views they've had now, but a few million. And they're the ones that I've had to just pin at the top. Thank you, but I can't get to everyone. And then check out these resources on this page if you've
Nice.
got any concerns. So yeah, and that then take the pressure off. You feel like you've done your job.
Yeah, definitely. I love it. I just absolutely love everything you're doing. And yeah, you touched on a little bit about the responsibility just as before we kind of wrap up. That must be hard, feeling that responsibility of giving out knowledge. And I think that's a little bit of the imposter syndrome in us all, can have those feelings, but also
Yeah,
that lack of control, because what you're doing here is not hands-on or face-to-face or actually consultative in any way. So I'm
yeah,
guessing in your NHS role, you would be doing
mm,
things one-to-one and face-to-face.
yeah.
In your social media feed, it's actually just all commenting backwards and forwards, but the work you're delivering is word of mouth and word of advice only.
Yeah, yeah, and it is tricky, and that's exactly why I've ended up feeling very torn. And where other healthcare professionals have kind of commented saying, "Well, not everybody should be doing this," and I'm like, I completely agree. And also, pelvic health physio isn't just about pelvic floor exercises, but I think what I've seen as time's gone on, I've reflected on it, and I've been able to see that people are telling me, do you know what? I have got an overactive pelvic floor and I've picked that up because of the squeezealong. So I think it's, and then they have gone to see a physio or they've gone to see their doctor where they can. And I think just putting it out there and just saying, let's talk about this, is making people think, oh, maybe I do have an issue there and I maybe do need to go and get it sorted out. But it still worries me every now and then that somebody will go out there and squeeze the pelvic floor constantly and then give themselves an issue. But yeah, I figure people need to have some responsibility to their own body and they need to be able to listen to that. And I
Yes.
think if any of us were there doing squats for an hour, we would stop probably when it started to get a bit sore, wouldn't we? Wouldn't push through it. And I'm hopeful there's lots of very sensible people out there who will do the squeeze along. And if it doesn't feel right, they'll stop and
Yeah,
not just go, either they're not interested or go and see somebody about it.
definitely. Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful talking to you.
It's been lovely, so nice.
Oh, good. I'm glad. And before we finish this week's episode, it's time for one of my favourite elements of the show. It's the social media fail. So this episode, you've chosen quite a hysterically bad fail. Do you want to talk us through it?
So it is where they have used, I think it's at Luton Airport, have
Yeah.
used a photograph of an aeroplane that has crash landed, and said, if you are going to use our airport, this won't happen. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
And actually, the backstory to that picture is awful. There's associated death of a child. So
Yeah.
what a massive fail. And it does make you think, doesn't it? Because we often do see pictures and we think, oh, what's a good caption to put to this? But it's so important to think, oh crikey, that's a classic sign that you can really upset people, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's such yeah, what you're saying is such a good point, because they've got a message, or even for me, this is like somebody's got a message to say and they've been really tactless about finding the
Mm,
visual to support it, Or they're really desperate for content creation here, and they've found this picture and thought, oh, I know, let's turn this into opportunistic content for ourselves, which again is pretty insensitive.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So yeah, I would say if you haven't got anything to say, don't say anything at all.
That's true. That's true.
Don't go trolling for stuff and turning it into something that could become a fail. And also just, yeah, think about the sensitivities of the photo or the, what you're referencing.
Photo, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Where the photos come from. And we quite commonly get that in pelvic health, because what kind of pictures are there other than really boring clinical ones? And the amount of times you see random pictures being used to represent. That's why I chose that one, actually, is because it's just plucking an image, because, oh yeah, that'll do. We'll stick that with that. You really need to, if you're going to use something that's relevant and
accurate,
and not going to upset people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because we do. I mean, especially online, when you read one thing and see something else, you will automatically associate the two things together, which some companies know and they abuse that, I guess, and to their advantage. Others just don't realize it and are quite naive. So yeah, always think about what visuals are representing that message and make sure they're accurate, relevant, and sensitive.
Yeah. A lot to do there, isn't there?
Definitely. Suzanne, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on Beyond the Hashtag, and wishing you all the best with Know Your Flaws. And we look forward to sharing these snippets on our feeds.
Yay, thank you so much. Thank you. Hopefully we can do it again soon.
100%.
That'd be brilliant. Thanks very much.